The countries most affected by the economic slowdown are likely to be those whose export raw material. Right? Part 1, the countries most affected by the economic slowdown. Part 2, are likely to be. Part 3, those whose export raw materials. Part 4, and then you have no error. So those, not whose, either it should be who or that. Right? The countries most affected by the economic slowdown are likely to be those who export raw materials, or those that export raw materials. Yeah? Error in part 4. So this is an easy one. Shubhar, the taxi service provider, is growing like a weed, spending millions of rupees to establish its root in the country. Shubhar, the taxi service provider, part 1, or rather it still is. Growing like a weed, part 2, spending millions of rupees, part 3, to establish its root in the country, part 4. Right? So, where is the error? So, Shubhar is the, let's analyze this question. Shubhar is the name of the taxi service provider. Okay. So, is this correct here? Because we'll be talking about a singular subject. Okay. What is happening? Growing like a weed, meaning as in spreading rapidly. Right? What is the feature or characteristic of a weed? It spreads rapidly. Spending, so how is it growing like a weed? Spending millions of rupees to do what? To establish. So, to is the right preposition here, right? Bringing in the right meaning. To establish its roots. The pronoun is also correct because we're talking about a thing, right? Its roots. Where? In the country. Again, the preposition is right with respect to place, area. We always use in as a preposition, right? So, everything seems fine. No error. The reason why here it's an infinitive, right? You know what an infinitive, right? What is the purpose of an infinitive? It tells you, it answers the question why. It brings in the purpose for which something happened or the intention behind something. So here, if I ask the question, Shubhar, the taxi service provider, is growing like a weed, spending millions of rupees for what? For what purpose? What is the intention behind them spending so much? An infinitive makes more sense rather than a continuous verb form. That's why it's to establish and not establishing. Yeah? How serious is the country's economic problems and how big an impact will these have on the world economies? It's pretty easy, right? You can quickly miss out on this if you're not paying attention. So this one, what's the error? Everybody knows error is in part 1. Why? What's the subject? Yeah, so why you changing is to are. What is the subject for you to change that? Problems, economic problems. Correct, right? More than one problem. Subject is plural. Change the singular subject to plural subject. Not country. Country is not the subject. The problems is the subject. How serious? What are they referring to? Not the country, but the economic problems. We're talking about the problems, the economic problems having an impact on the economies of the world. Right? So when I say big in impact, what is an impact? Some sort of repercussion. Okay, that can be another difficult word for you. Just an after effect. Right? As a result of the problems, how will the economies of the world be affected? Right? That's what it. So how big an impact it can cause? Meaning, what sort of an after effect can these economic problems have on the world economies? That's what it means. And it can be huge. The impact will be huge. That's what they say. How big an impact? How huge? No, the reason why it is not the definite article the here, because we don't know what sort of an impact it will have. It can be any impact, right? So you understand that an, the indefinite article, talks about any, not specifying the impact here. So we don't know what specific impact it will have. It can have any impact. That's why the right indefinite article is an and not the. It can be any impact and the right article is an. Obviously because you have vowel, it can't be a, it has to be an. The survey asked respondents from more than 50 countries to identify kinds of people they would want as neighbors. Is there an error in this sentence? The survey asked respondents, part 1, from more than 50 countries, to part 2, identify kinds of people, part 3, they would want as neighbors. Part 4. Is there an error in this question? They would want as neighbors seems absolutely fine for me. The error is in part 3, like most of you pointed out, right? Not kinds of people. The survey asked respondents from more than 50 countries to identify whom will they want as neighbors. So, the right expression is the kind of people you want to have as neighbors. So, the entire expression changes, not kinds of people, but what kind of people do they want as neighbors? The kind of people they would want as neighbors. So, the error is in part 3.